Tell us about a little bit about your experience at NASA. How was the whole experience like?
Honestly, if I think back to my experience with NASA, I have a lot of mixed feelings.
AI is, impacting every aspect of life. On the one side, we've seen such kind of people who are very optimistic about that, who have actively using that. But on the other side of people, who are just waiting for the doomsday to happen. And and they in their mind, they're waiting, yeah, someday or sometime the doomsday will come, AI will overpower us. So what's your take on that?
It's so scary, actually, reading through it. The
Hmm.
fact that I don't know what purpose it serves is even scarier.
So anyone who's struggling and who really wants to prepare for this new wave, or it might be businesses, small, medium, large, whatever it is, whatever the size is. So according to you, what are the core concepts, or whatever the core building blocks they need to focus on?
I think uh, I think if your mentality is
Alexander, thanks for being on the show. How are you doing today?
thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. So Alexander, I was just, reading your bio, and man, it's a whole, kind of diverse background, from working at NASA and, switching to the whole AI space. And, so how did this whole, major shift happens?
Uh, it's a very common question I get, right? Everything from NASA, autonomous vehicles, robotics, even life sciences, pharmaceuticals, finance, personal finance, consumer tech. In some ways, it's completely different domains.
Hmm.
From my perspective, I'm basically doing the same thing and just getting better at it every year. It's really difficult problems. Autonomous vehicles or building biological systems feels very similar. It's some mix of engineering, physics, complex systems modeling, and then the idea of turning these like very mostly in regulated domains, turning those difficult problems into some commercial product,
Hmm.
and then raising venture capital funding for it, recruiting the right team, bringing experts around me. One just lets me stay curious and just keep learning every single day. And the second part is that, once we actually solve a problem in these domains, then it affects hundreds of millions or billions of people.
Hmm.
And it's often about category creation. It's, a complete paradigm shift. I think I'm one of the few lucky people in the world that actually has the resources to work on these kinds of problems. And so, you know, let's go full throttle. Let's push it all the way.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's kind of amazing. When you know what drives you, it makes it so much easy to to move forward. When you know that you have this kind of drive to to solve the problems, who's going to impact millions and millions of people, then no matter whatever the field is, you're going to go at it.
Innovation oftentimes happens at the intersection of two fields. And
Hmm.
so, lots of people have tried to build investing tools and trading tools and robo advisors. And we are absolutely not the first tool that's ever been built using modern tech. But, the idea that we can take certain approaches from autonomous vehicles and complex systems modeling from biology and apply it to macroeconomics, to news at scale. And we have this idea of hybrid AI with complex bounding functions, super technical, but basically the idea is
Hmm.
that, we can take modern portfolio theory and, hedge fund inspired models, sort of standard portfolio managed fund on Wall Street. You can use those as constraints problem. And then within that, let AI find optimization opportunities. And as society, we're getting more and more comfortable with AI. I don't know if we're quite at the point where we're ready for AI to manage your money for you. But the
Hmm.
idea that you could answer a bunch of questions, connect some accounts, have AI find optimization opportunities for you, I bet there's, over 50% of Americans that are open to that idea at this point.
Absolutely, absolutely. That totally makes sense, because AI is, impacting every aspect of life. And, we have seen from the past couple of years, it become, due to Chat GPT and all that kind of stuff, back to back, so many, all the big players are in the game. And, it has been
Mhm.
so much commoditized that, even the layman are using AI for, day-to-day tasks. So apart from that, one very interesting question just came to my mind because, on the one side, we've seen such kind of people who are very optimistic about that, who have actively using that. But on the other side of people, who are just waiting for the doomsday to happen. And and they in their mind, they're waiting, yeah, someday or sometime the doomsday will come, AI will overpower us. So what's your take on that?
I think it's happening quicker than anyone is really prepared for. I think that,
Mm,
I even if I look at, even if I look online, like yesterday I had a LinkedIn post that went semi-viral. Not millions of views, but hundreds of thousands of views. And it was a little bit controversial. Uh, Something about Apple and AI and hundreds of comments, and I'm reading through the comments, and it is truly impossible to know what is AI and what is not AI. And
yeah.
I just I think I just accidentally hit the right set of keywords to trigger a whole bunch of basically any posts I make about Trump politics or like one of the Mag 7, has all these like crazy controversial posts in the response. And it definitely feels AI led. It's very different than
Mm,
posting a company update, for example. And, I get hundreds of comments there, but it's friends and family and people in my network. And, it's sort of these first degree connections. And on some topics like that, it almost feels like the robot half of the internet gets activated, and it's so scary actually reading through it because it
yeah.
feels so indistinguishable.
Mm,
And like it's clearly it clearly serves some purpose to somebody, right? The fact
mm,
that they don't know what purpose it serves is even scarier.
yeah.
Is this someone trying to, distort public opinion? Is it some foreign state that's trying to destabilize? Is it some psyop? And then immediately there's a part of my mind that goes like, all of that sounds like a big conspiracy theory and some right-wing nonsense. And so it sort of just gets dismissed on like, no, it can't actually be happening. I must
Mm,
be just reading too much into this. And there's just this general that builds up. And I think that distrust is going to build up very quickly in almost everything we see. And that I think it's more than just misinformation. It's just like the misinformation causes this distrust in institutions, in anything we read, in any medium. Video has gotten so good that
yeah.
something something comes up on Twitter and the first thought is this real or is this AI generated?
Yeah.
No idea. No one knows. No one, is able to verify where it came from. And we're in the first inning, right? It's just getting started. I, you so we're a 10-person team right now with Portfolio Pilot. I think 3 times more efficient now than we were 5 years ago with my previous company. and it's accelerating. We talk about, should we hire another software engineer? Things are going well. We could probably do more with the software engineer. And we say, okay, what are the things that this new software engineer would do? And we
Mm.
write it down and we say, well, we could just spin up some more Claude Code instances or use Cursor to solve these things. It's kind of annoying having another person that we need to onboard. They're not going to be as efficient for the first 2 or 3 months anyway.
Yeah.
Just, take one of our engineers and like put him on this other project and, use AI to augment that. Or, you know what? Let's give Claude Code to our designer.
Mm.
He's raising all these issues. He's creating Asana tickets. Why doesn't he just create Asana, create tickets in the AI itself? And then all the engineers really need to do is just review the code. And, then engineering isn't a bottleneck at all anymore. Why are we talking about hiring another software engineer? We should hire another designer.
Yeah.
And why is the designer so slow at submitting Claude Code tickets? Well, he's not, he ran out of low-hanging fruit, things to solve. We should talk to more customers. And so really the issue is, we're not having enough customer conversations. How do we get more customers on the call? Like it feels like the problem shifts every single time. Every month there's some new, AI tool that comes out. There's some efficiency gain there. And so the idea of running a 2-month recruiting process, finding someone, training them up, them potentially not being the right cultural fit, not worth it. Let's just onboard a few more AI tools, spin up more instances, pay another $100 a month for, whatever coding agent, design agent. And I can't imagine that's going to revert back to something else. I don't really see, if I fast forward to 5 years from now, we're doing billions of dollars, why wouldn't we still be this 10-person team we are today?
Yeah, absolutely. That totally makes sense. You know, and so how was the experience? How was the, code quality and all that kind of stuff, versus human code and versus,
The crazy thing is right now, our designer inputs the ticket that he would put into
mm,
Asana, instead just puts it directly into the Cursor agent or Claude agent. It runs for about 5 minutes. It creates a pull request. It goes to the engineering team. And the engineering team, our current process is the engineering team, whoever the reviewer is allowed to give one additional feedback comment to the agent to fix whatever the issue is.
mm,
You modified the wrong file. You forgot about this edge case. And in many cases, it just gets fixed after one, extra sentence or two to fix it. Sometimes the agent gets it wrong. Say right now, something like 30% of the agent, even after a single, extra comment, it
mm.
still gets it wrong. And we simply just delete those pull requests.
Yeah.
We don't bother to fix it. It doesn't matter. 70%, on 1,000 tickets is 700 more pull requests than we, would have gotten last month.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
That's crazy.
so, the quality, it doesn't really matter what the quality is. Obviously, it'd be nice if it was 80%, 90%,
Mm,
and next month, the month afterwards, it will be, right? These agents get better. It's able to deal with more and more complex tasks. But, I think it feels a little bit similar to, hiring a whole team of interns that are super cheap. And, if you could have basically 100 free interns, then
mm.
probably the best way to deal with them is not to make every single one really effective, right? You simply just, have them all do stuff. And once in a while they strike gold and they solve stuff and you just merge those in. As long as you have a good testing infrastructure, as long as you have some, review process that you trust, then, you want to optimize for quantity rather than quality because you can just filter out the low quality stuff. We're perfectly
Absolutely.
fine with some, random
Oh,
distribution where 70%, is good enough to merge in.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and even in this case, like the main issue is oftentimes like the designer doesn't know what components we have in the system.
Mm, mm,
And so like the designer says something like, this, on our simulations page, or like where we're inputting preferences for the kind of financial advice you want to see in the product, you know, the box is really hard to input data to because it has a gray background, and you should change it to white background. And in reality, that's a system level components where we use this text input box across the entire system. And
mm,
so, Cursor tries to just
mm,
change the background of this one component on the simulations page, even though it
mm.
should be doing it across the entire app. You know, this you can solve that in many different ways, right? It could be the agent pulling in our entire component library and just having a lot more context.
Yeah.
It could be the agent itself just getting smarter and just asking the question as part of the process, is there a component library? It could be the engineer on our team just adds one additional line to the designer's input saying, this is a general component, just change it everywhere. Or it could be the designer, just having a little bit more context about the fact that we have this component library and knowing that this is a general component. Right. And
Yeah.
so any one of those four parts, could fix that particular problem. And that's like 15% of the failure cases right now. And so if we
Mm,
just like literally it's just simply just like the current thing on my mind, right? Yesterday we had a meeting about this, brainstormed a bunch of ideas. How do we get from 70% success rate to 85% success rate? And this one particular thing was identified as just like super low hanging fruit. So what that's, you know, right now it's the end of July. By the end of August, we should be doing 100 more PRs
mm.
by having our designer add one additional sentence to the input tickets that we create. That's, I mean, this is the kind of thing that, like, we would have had to hire 3 extra engineers for as recently as 3 years ago.
Absolutely.
It's accelerating at a scale that like people really do not understand. And like my main worry is simply just like, can we keep riding this wave? Are we moving fast enough? Are we
Yeah.
iterating on these processes fast enough? Are we staying focused? Are we getting enough customer feedback to make sure we're building the right thing?
Mm,
Because yeah, if we fall off the wave, I don't
yeah.
know if it's ever possible to recover.
Yeah, because it is moving at so fast pace, and it's really crucial, to keep up with, all the latest AI technologies and all the latest tools, because whenever you see it in every day there are lots and lots of, AI tools are coming up, the big techs are coming, and all that kind of, there's so much going on. So anyone who's struggling, and who really wants to prepare for this new wave, or it might be businesses, small, medium, large, whatever it is, whatever the size is. So according to you, what are the core concepts, or whatever the core building blocks they need to focus on?
I think I think if your mentality is education and how do I train myself,
Mm,
then you will be years behind and probably never catch up.
mm,
And that's really controversial, right? Or controversial. I think it's scary to think that like you cannot just take time, educate yourself, and then jump in. It feels similar to saying 10 years ago, you should take a coding boot camp or get a CS degree so that you can start a business, whatever. I think you need to be in the trenches building something. And when I say building something, I don't just mean engineering or a tech product. I could be marketing, right? We're using on our single biggest customer acquisition channel at this point, where we get a third of all of our users, is from the AI tools themselves. ChatGPT, Grok, Gemini.
Yeah.
And we honestly don't really know why. Like I don't have a good explanation as to why that is. But we're seeing something like 20 or 30% growth in our AI customer acquisition every single week at this point. And we're just doing a bunch of SEO stuff and writing articles and this programmatic SEO. And we like to think that the product is genuinely interesting and useful to people. And I don't know, maybe the AIs have a preference for other AI tools. Here's an AI financial advisor. It's possible that the AIs, people ask investing questions and the AIs say, well, I'm not allowed to give you actual financial advice.
Yeah.
But if you want an AI tool that can actually give you financial advice that is
Absolutely.
registered with the
Absolutely.
SEC, check out Portfolio Pilot. And so, we're just trying to figure out how to lean into that. And so there's a massive amount of things that you can do on the marketing side. We're running through and giving these AI tools. We're having it run through our product and landing pages. Like last week we had what we called Marketing Day at Portfolio Pilot. Simply just first impressions on all of our marketing material that's publicly available. And we fed a lot of, part of it is just first impressions human wise, and the first impressions from an AI perspective. Here's our landing page. What's not working on it? What can we improve? Give us 10 specific optimizations. Here's our customer profile. Here's our ICP. And like we came up with 125 very low hanging fruit optimizations across all of our marketing materials, social, pages, some of our SEO pages, articles, Reddit, whatnot. And so if we're talking about, how do you prepare for what's coming, what's already happening now, I think you
Yeah.
just need to be building something using these tools, talking to other people using these tools, and just experimenting with it. And it could be your own project on the side, whatever it is. But, I think everything needs to be AI first. And I think you need to assume that whatever you're doing right now and spending your time on, 80% can already be completely automated. And,
Yeah.
you should figure out how to automate it, how to augment it. And the 80% is either, get rid of that part of your job or just do 5 times more than what you're doing right now. If you automate it you're doing at the moment, then the 20% that's left, that's actually really hard and only humans are capable of that, you can just do 5 times more of that. And then once you get there, then probably 80% of that can be automated. And so in my role, these days, I find myself basically just not doing anything twice. I used to have a whole bunch of boring, repetitive tasks. And I mostly just solving new problems at this point. Because if something is a boring, repetitive task, prime candidate to offload it to AI.
Yeah. I mean, that's really interesting, and that's really fascinating where we are heading. And And you have raised a very wonderful point, which most of the people missed out there. Instead of just thinking about it, just start taking actions and start building something, because
I
that's
think you
where
learn by doing.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
you like, there's so many things that are simply just like practical, right? Like just prompting better, adding the right
Mm,
context, seeing what works, what doesn't work. So hard to read about that. It's so much easier just to get your hands dirty, just apply to a very specific problem,
right.
see where the limitations are, see what's working, what's not working. I also think you have to do it a lot. Many times something doesn't work on first blush,
Mm,
and people say, oh, the AI just isn't quite ready for that. I run into many people that talk about limitations of AI, and I honestly don't think I've really run into any limitations myself. It oftentimes doesn't work the first time.
mm, mm,
But my MO is simply I'm just not using it right. I mean, I think it's kind of like, if I hired somebody and I said, you should respond to all these customer support tickets, we get 50 customer support tickets every single day. And I say, go start solving them. I come back tomorrow. The chance that they're going to have done a good job on that is pretty low. Right? They have zero
mm,
training. They don't
mm.
understand the kind of tone we want to use with customers. I haven't given them access to, any of our databases or Stripe, or like they have no idea how to issue refunds or kick support tickets over to engineering. They haven't been given permission to issue any promo codes. They
Yeah.
don't have any sort of institutional knowledge about every single day, 20% of our tickets fall into this like very specific category. Uh, and like we deal with those in a specific way. And so is it crazy that the AI isn't solving things, right away? That support person is going to take you a month to fully ramp up with like, I'm
Mm,
probably going to have 20 conversations with them, point out different tools, correct their mistakes, point them in the right direction, teach them how to be a little bit more efficient. They've never used Zendesk before in their life. And so, like, they don't know that, something like macros exist that they can just,
mm.
sort of, slash, X to, pull up common query responses. And so, the idea of sort of working through setting up the system, figuring out what it can do, giving it access to other tools, after 20 iterations, you have something that works pretty well. Even then, this customer support guy, he's, even fully trained is going to make a lot of mistakes, right? I can
Yeah.
probably expect him to do well 95% of the time, as well as me, right? I'm the founder. I actually know exactly how I want the company to respond to customer support tickets. There's no way anybody else is going to replicate it like exactly the way I want it to. And
Mm.
so it's going to be some approximation of what I'm okay with, according to some set of rules written down or not. And so how does that relate back to all the AI stuff we're talking about? What's the difference between this customer support guy I've trained up and the AI I've trained up with the right set of prompts and tools? There's level two problems that he shouldn't deal with either, and he needs to kick over to the engineering team. And so somewhere along the way, implicitly or explicitly, we have to define what level two problems are and how to recognize them and kick them over.
Yeah,
Whether
absolutely.
that's, 4 sentences as part of my prompt or something that this support guy has sort of picked up, over the course of a couple of conversations. What's the difference?
Mm. Absolutely, that totally makes sense, because whenever you hire a new team member, you have to train them, and then they have a little bit more context, they have a little bit more knowledge base, and then they've been trained. So just like AI. So Perfectly, explained. So, Alexander, before we wrap this up, tell us about a little bit about your experience at NASA. How was the whole experience like?
Uh, on one hand, honestly, if I think back to my experience with NASA, I have a lot of mixed feelings.
Mm,
It was super cool to work there. It was like I was working on a little drone called Mars Helicopter that would, 10 years later go on to land on the Martian surface and explore together with the rover. And it did
mm,
dozens of flights in a super thin atmosphere with no GPS system. It needed to work reliably, right? Instant crash on the ground, break a rotor, someone would run out, replace the rotor, and we'd get
mm,
back flying again. If it lost tracking, in the computer vision system that we built, we simply just had it touch down. We brought it down to the environment we were flying in, reset. You can't do that on another planet. There's simply just like a time delay in communication.
yeah.
Right. I think it's something like 5 to 15 minutes of communication delay, depending on, where the orbits are, how far away the planets are from each other. And so you can't remote control this drone. It needs to be completely autonomous. It needs to be able to do things on its own.
Mm,
And so, working on one of the coolest problems that, I could have imagined at the time, our lab was right next to the rover lab for opportunity. And so they were just driving around, in the rover yard right next to us. A couple buildings down was like uh, the core mission control center for the deep space network, to be able to communicate with anything in our solar system beyond, Earth orbit. There was, lectures every single day. I was working with extremely smart people and like very cutting edge computer vision. And like we didn't really call it AI, but sort of early neural nets.
mm,
And computer vision is a tremendous amount of data. And so like a lot of the stuff that is used in large language models today basically came from like early neural network and computer vision systems, AlexNet, ImageNet, things like that. And so but then I would show up. The gates would open at 7 a.m. I'd be there 7:01. And then the gates to the whole facility, closed at 7 p.m. And I would, basically be kicked out every day by security. Why not? I was working on like some of the coolest problems. And, a lot of my colleagues at the time would come in, 9 or 10 a.m. They would, go for a coffee break, catch up, go for lunch, catch a lecture. Then there was a couple hours of work in the afternoon, and then they would go home, pick up their kids. And like there was just no urgency. It felt
mm,
we were
mm,
working on a 10-year project that was, 40, $50 million budget. If it took 11 years and, it cost another $5 million to finish up the project, that's like 3 administrations from now, completely different NASA budget at that time. There's some chance like the whole project's going to get scrapped before then. There's some possibility that scope will change. What can we control this year? Let's focus more on the papers that we should write, present at conferences. It was like a much more academic environment than I ever
mm,
expected. And I was actually pretty set on doing a PhD afterwards. And the Jet Propulsion Lab is like really closely affiliated with Caltech in LA, Pasadena. And kind of felt like, okay, this might be a good opportunities or stepping stones, figure out whether I want to do a PhD at Caltech, something like that. And I think I was just really turned off with the idea that you focus on academics and papers and conferences. And, I thought like, okay, if we work really hard,
Mm,
then maybe we can get to Mars in 7 years instead of 10 years. Wouldn't that be amazing?
yeah,
And why would we
absolutely.
not work day and night to get this done quicker? This is absolutely going to push forward technology, just truly, space exploration, what we know about the universe. But I was like, felt like I was pretty alone in that. And
Mm,
so, incredible experience, but, you know, a lot of good and, a lot of bad as well. And so, like, it kind of felt like startups were like just an obvious answer to this 24/7 on working on the coolest problems, building something from nothing, with a lot of people that were just like very excited to show up to work every day and just, a competition and a race and someone else is going to get there first is extremely motivating to me.
absolutely, absolutely, man. Totally love that. And I can totally resonate with that. And you have raised a quite a wonderful, a very, you have touched a very sensitive nerve because for the people, there are some kind of people, who are not meant for theory based. And I can totally understand because, back in my university days, whenever there are some subjects which are theory based, I just, I was just like, man, it's theory. I always wanted to do something more practical based, like building apps, building all,
Mm.
fun projects. So you have faced a similar kind of situation. You know, you wanted to build something instead of, just academics and all the theory kind of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I ended up hiring PhDs and expert, over the years through the different companies and always loved sitting in on these R&D meetings. And still the focus was like, okay, here's like cutting edge research. Here's this new thing we found. If it takes 4 years to some sort of practical
Mm,
application, it's probably not. What can we take that's cutting edge and applicable right now that increases our accuracy or reliability that lets us launch this new feature or whatever it is? Yeah, completely with you
absolutely.
there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Because at the end, all that theory, all that research, the main purpose of this is to drive action. If that is not driving action, then what's the point? If you're not
Exactly.
producing any kind of action, then it's all on the paper. It's just on the paper.
Ultimately want to make the world a better place, right?
Yeah.
And do something to move humanity forward. Absolutely. Yeah, that feels like that feels right. I like it. These are great questions. I've really enjoyed being on today.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally, totally, man. Love your energy and your deep insights. And I'm gonna definitely have you again. We have so much to talk about.
Happy to come back.
Absolutely. Likewise, likewise. Thank you so much for being on the show. Totally love your energy and looking forward to have you again on back.
Thank you very much. You have a great day.
You're welcome. Take care. Have a good day.